Welcome to the BearBuy 2030 webinar series. This is the 6th installment, Receiving in BearBuy and Why Everyone Should Be Doing It. Please use the chat area in the ReadyTalk application for clarification, questions, or feedback. Currently, everyone has been placed on mute. So if you have any questions as we go through this presentation, please ask them via the chat box. At the end of the presentation, we will review all the questions that came in via the chat box. To access this presentation or listen to the recording, please visit our BearBuy YouTube channel. The URL address is listed in front of you. The agenda for today consists of going over what the session is about, receiving, going over the policy behind it, physical receiving, online electronic receiving, and the added benefits to online electronic receiving. We'll also go over BearBuy resources and support. And then lastly, questions and answers. This session is intended for all BearBuy users. It is only 30 minutes long, with the first 15 minutes dedicated to going over all the receiving concepts, and the last 15 minutes solely dedicated to questions and answers. Now let's get started. We are first going to go over the current policy behind receiving. The current policy states that the accounting officers, head of departments, and other appropriate campus or office of the president administrative officers are responsible for retaining the substantiating documents cited in policy AM-A000-7, titled Official Documentation Required in Support of University Financial Transactions Policy. This policy states that documents are to be retained for use by internal, external, and governmental auditors for the periods of retention specified in the University Records Disposition Schedule Manual. Usually that means about 5 years. The URL to that UCOP policy is listed in front of you. The specific information related to receiving is found in Section 2.A. So with the UCOP policy in place, physical receiving is required. Policy states that evidence of receipt of goods or services, either in the form of a departmental approval or receipt certification upon the invoice, or in the form of a receiving report, is required. There's different variations of the form of departmental approval or receipt certification can be, but the ones we've seen on campus is usually a packing slip or a copy of the invoice with an OK to pay from the individual who received the goods and or services. The receipt certification is taken as indication that the quantity received and accepted is the quantity ordered or desired by the user department. So pretty much, what was ordered was delivered. Physical receiving refers to the acceptance of physical goods and services with a collection of the packing slip or any documentation supporting the delivery of the good and or service. Currently, the way physical receiving is done varies by department on campus. Some departments perform central receiving, where packages are sent to a central location and redistributed. This is seen a lot with lab type of departments, where all these lab materials are being ordered. They're all sent to a central location before being redistributed to the individual who requested the item. Other departments perform uncentralized receiving, where packages are delivered to individuals directly from the carrier. An example of this would be if I ordered office supplies and I had the office supplies delivered directly to my office. We also see departments that do a hybrid kind of receiving, so some items may be delivered directly to the original shopper. But other items, such as, say, computer supplies, may be delivered to a central location, for instance, the department's IT group. Another type of receiving is online electronic receiving. So let's go over what we mean by this a little bit more. Online electronic receiving refers to performing the receiving action in BearBuy. It refers to creating a cost or quantity receipt in BearBuy after the acceptance of the physical goods and services. Collection of the packing slip or any documentation supporting the delivery of the goods or services is still required. Like physical receiving, online electronic receiving varies by departments on campus. Some departments perform central receiving where packages are sent to a central location, received in BearBuy, and then redistributed. So the central receiver receives the items from the carrier, then goes in BearBuy and creates a receipt attaching all the packing slips and any supporting documentation that relates to that transaction. Other departments perform uncentralized receiving where packages are delivered to individuals directly from the carrier, and the individual who receives that item creates the receipt in BearBuy. Like physical receiving, there's some departments that do have a hybrid model of the online electronic receiving, where certain items are directly delivered to the original shopper, while other items, for instance, computer items and/or supplies, are delivered to a central receiving area. As you've seen, how you receive varies, and there's no one right way to do it. It's up to the department to see which one fits their business process. But we do recommend performing the online electronic receiving, just because all that information can live in BearBuy and it can serve as a one-stop shop for anyone looking for information regarding that package. So if you do receive in BearBuy, receiving can be considered an approval to pay. So if a voucher approver is reviewing this voucher or invoice to be paid, they can take your receipt as acceptance and take it as an okay to pay the invoice. It is recommended that timely BearBuy receipts are recorded when services are rendered or goods have been received rather than when the vendor submits the invoice. So in other words, as soon as you get the items or the services, create a receipt in BearBuy. That way, when the invoice comes in, there is no back and forth between the voucher approver and the individual who ordered the services or goods to see if the items or services are okay to pay. Instead, when the invoice comes in and the voucher approver needs to review it, the voucher approver will see that the receipt has already been created and then quickly go ahead and approve that voucher. So I've already hinted at a couple added benefits that receiving in BearBuy has, but let's go over a couple more. There are lots of added benefits when receiving online electronically. The first being that documentation retention remains in BearBuy. So when receiving in BearBuy, there's no need to file paper documents somewhere in your office. Instead, all these packing slips or associated paper documents are scanned to the receipt. So there's no need to keep paper documents in your department. Also, documents are readily available when any university official needs it. So when these documents are requested, there's no need to go through files or boxes to find this information. Instead, you could just log into BearBuy, locate the associated purchase order, and then from there go straight into the receipt created for those goods and/or services. Receiving in BearBuy also fulfills the documentation policy requirements listed by UCOP. Receiving in BearBuy also creates added transparency. So when receipts are created in BearBuy, the date of the creation, the items received, the packing slip, any links, comments, and the name of the individual who created the receipt are all listed on the actual receipt. So all this information lives there, so if you have any questions or need more clarification, the receipt will contain all this information. When large POs are put in place and a receipt is created, the remaining amount quantity pending receiving updates automatically in BearBuy. So say a PO was created for 10 items and I only received 5, the PO will also list that 5 items were received and 5 items are pending receipt. So it has that information visible, so in case you need an update or you want to see where these items are, you could find that information in BearBuy. Another added transparency is the accessibility to all of the associated transactions. So you can navigate from the original cart or requisition to the purchase order, to the voucher, and to all the receipts associated to this transaction. So it's easy to locate specific information needed when requested by UCOP, internal and or external auditors. So now that we talked about the added benefits with receiving in the system, let's look at how to create receipts in BearBuy. Since we don't have enough time to cover all the functionality with creating receipts in BearBuy, we have created step-by-step demo videos that go over receiving online electronically. In other words, receiving in BearBuy. The first video is titled Creating Cost Receipts in BearBuy Demo. This demo goes over creating a cost receipt, also known as an amount receipt, editing it, and deleting existing cost receipts. The URL link to this video is listed in front of you. So cost or amount receipts are associated to amount-based transactions. This may be blanket amounts for services, independent contractors, off-campus events, and so on. The other video is titled Creating Quantity Receipts in BearBuy Demo. This demo goes over creating a quantity receipt, editing, and deleting existing quantity receipts. The URL address to this video is listed in front of you. So quantity receipts refers to when you're receiving items, tangible items. So anything that you could touch, feel, and see. So the main difference between the first video and the second one is a different receipt type. Now let's go over the screens associated to creating any of these receipts are exactly the same. The BearBuy website is the source for the most up-to-date news, quantity, announcements, or amount, and training resources. The website address is listed in front of you. The presentation portion. We also have a BearBuy YouTube channel, and why everyone should be doing it. Here we post all of our functional demos, which are useful when needing to learn different features of the system. This has helped to understand the difference between physical receiving, the URL and receiving in BearBuy YouTube channel, and the added benefits when you do receive in BearBuy. If you need more assistance, please contact the help desk. Their phone number, hours of operation, and email address is listed in front of you. That concludes the presentation portion of this webinar.